I started Sellerant in June of 2007. I founded the company to specifically work with startups and small businesses to navigate the complexities of growth when they're up against larger competition or just starting out and there's high risk. The objective is very clear. It's a mission to help those who have the most risk and the most exposure and who have the most difficulty navigating the risks and the complexities of getting to market.
Welcome to The Revenue Recipe. We are joining you here for episode 0. I'm Ben Wiggins. I'm here with Kenan Rappuchi, the founder and CEO of Sellerant, and we're here to talk a little bit about what to expect from the rest of this show. Kenan, how you doing today?
Doing good, Ben. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm great. It's
awesome.
It's a good day to do some podcasting.
Yes, it is.
Let's talk a little bit about you to get us started.
Okay, so I don't know how much time we have, but I'll try to give you the condensed version because there's quite a bit to me.
Sure.
And I'm sure most people wouldn't be interested in most of it. But I am here in Austin, Texas, by way of Silicon Valley, by way of New England, by way of Northern Virginia. So I've done sort of the North American triangle. My background professionally started as a technical recruiter back in 1983. These were the days when we were using telephones that had push buttons on them.
Yeah.
And file cabinets that were rolling with manila folders and color-coded Avery labels for the type of discipline one of our candidates were recruiting did professionally. So I go back a ways. But ultimately, my background is around finding solutions to problems for businesses, and that's pretty much how I've built my career. Early days, wasn't much into education. I'm the proverbial, probably the poster child for a black sheep of the family. Two sisters, one younger, one older. My interests in the early days were football, cars, motorcycles, girls, weed. Not generally in that order. It was sort of, order of the day. So I literally barely made it through high school. My father at one point said, "You're going to have to get your stuff together." So I made him a deal.
Okay.
I said, "Okay, fine. I'll join the Navy if you buy me a motorcycle." So he did, and I did, and I got one over on him because I ended up joining a program for reserves, which was 6 months active, and then every month for a weekend and every year for 2 weeks on active training. So I served my country. I'm proud to say that. And I was able to get a 1981 Yamaha Maxim 550 motorcycle out of the deal. So that's what started my journey into motorcycle riding and muscle cars and other forms of competitive sports, which pretty much shaped my early years. So when I started working in 83 as a recruiter, it was because my father owned a staffing agency, a contingency search firm where they'd recruit technical talent in the Washington, D.C. area and get paid fees for placing that talent. And I asked my dad, "Hey, maybe I should come to work for you," because I did have the gift of gab, and I had one thing I could do well, which is read the room and understand where a good match would be made to try to reach a positive outcome for every party.
Yeah.
He said, "Go to work for this other company, earn your spurs." So that's what I ended up doing, and rapidly rose in the ranks in that recruiting firm, and that set my career off on a trajectory of taking the competitive nature that I started with sports and riding motorcycles and driving muscle cars, and working toward being literally the best at what I could be in reaching outcomes for businesses.
So I got a follow-up question to that. So we've got young Kenan, not a loose cannon necessarily, but a young man with a lot of adrenaline on his mind and a lot of other stuff on his mind going into this new firm. What was the most awkward moment or like the funniest story from that like kind of first step in your career?
This is perfect. Great question. I was like maybe 2 months, the rookie in the office, cock of the walk, trying to be the big dude. And I'm a small stature guy. I'm 5'8". I'm not the biggest dude in the room. The executive VP of the company comes down from Boston where the headquarters were. And he takes us all out for cocktails and dinner at a real nice restaurant in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. And I remember walking up to him, Steve Petrowitz, probably my first mentor, him and Curtis Wink. And I said, Steve, I want your job. What do I have to do to get your job?
Nice.
And he chuckled. I'm 23 years old.
Sure.
He's seasoned in an executive in the contract staffing industry for technical talent. And I literally said, I want your job. What do I have to do?
Yeah.
So he did love that inspiration and that motivation, but he obviously was chuckling, looking at this kid, going, "Who the hell does he think he is?"
Right. Yeah.
So that was pretty funny because everybody in the office then that worked around me knew that I meant business, but they didn't know how to handle me.
Yeah.
So that created some unique dynamics every day.
So when he chuckled in the moment, but you said he was one of your first mentors. When he got around to answering that question, like maybe not you're going to take my job, but like to rise to where I am now, like what was the most important advice that you got from him that surprised you in some way or felt counterintuitive or like meaningful beyond just the, hey, show up early, leave late, work hard, that kind of the standard stuff. What went beyond that?
I can tell you right now, it was 6 simple words.
Yeah.
Plan your work and work your plan. Those 6 words set the stage for me to identify how to execute the key tasks and processes that you need to execute to get something done. There's always a system. When I was younger, one of the things I liked doing was building models. These were plastic model kit cars. They were molded plastic pieces. Had paint. You painted by hand or spray. And
you're speaking Jake's language.
A lot of piece parts, and literally printed instructions on what is the sequence to put it together, right? And how to build a model. And mine were always like muscle cars or airplanes, complex, models that had a lot of parts and pieces. So it was natural for me, and I think I just kind of gained that. I don't know if it's ADHD or just sort of an attribute I have is just following a blueprint, following a schematic.
Yeah.
So when Steve said, "Plan your work, work your plan," it made sense to me. So that was really the catalyst of connecting what came naturally to me and what a practical application of talent and skill should be to meet an outcome, which is an objective you can measure and aim towards.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's good micro advice and it's good macro advice. It's good life advice.
It is. I mean, you think about it, it's like, you can just kind of roll through life like a tumbleweed, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you could just allow things to happen, and that's great. If that's where you feel comfortable, by all means, do that. Entrepreneurs, on the other hand, business founders, the reason they're starting a business is because generally they want to do things their way.
Yeah.
And knowing the risks that are involved, hopefully they're taking stock of what they do well, what they don't do well, but they've got to have a plan, right?
Yeah. I have respect even for people who fail in entrepreneurship because, man, you get one life. And for some people, that means I want to see, every country in the world. Bravo. All respect to that. For some people, it means, look, I just want to take it easy. I want to punch the clock. I want to go home. I want to watch TV. I want to hang out with my kids. Fine. But understand that not making a decision about, what direction you're going to go, what you're going to do, how you're going to spend your time. Not making a decision is making a decision. And inertia is perfectly happy to decide for you.
Yes, it will. And it might decide with a hard slap to your face if you don't attack it first. I totally agree.
Yeah. So from the Northeast, then.
Yeah. So I started my career in Northern Virginia, and Steve Petrowitz, who said, "Hey, look, plan your work, work your plan." He left the company that I worked for when he worked for, when I said I wanted his job. He started his own business in competition with the other business.
Yeah.
And he called me down in the Virginia office and he said, "Yo, Pooch, remember when you said you wanted my job?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "That was a keystone moment in my early career." He said, "Well, want to move to Boston?" I'd never been to Boston. I knew it was cold there, and it was Northeast, and I knew they had a bunch of PSMBs, but we're not going to talk about what that acronym means. Maybe another day. So I said, sure, why not? I had nothing going on at the time, and I figured, he was going to bring me in and put me into an account management role and help me elevate my career.
Yep.
So I packed up a U-Haul, put my 1985 IROC Z Camaro on the back of a trailer.
Yeah.
Of course, it was red and red, as any good guinea would have, right? Headed north and set up shop in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. Rented a room out from a really nice couple and started working at a company called Triple T. That was in 1985. So I was in Boston from 85 until 92. Went from the IROC Z to a couple of GTA Trans Ams, both of which were stolen. Little did I know at the time that Boston was one of the car theft capitals of the world. Which pissed me off. But I was running agencies and really building my career quickly. That's when I first got involved in tech, working with a lot of tech companies. I remember I was in Data General Corporation, which is down in Hopkinton, Mass. And in their lobby, they had a computer with 64 kilobytes of RAM. I don't think it was megabytes. It might have been megabytes.
No, it's probably kilobytes.
Okay, but it was about as big as the room we're in right now.
Yeah.
Okay, back in the day. So, you know, being a boomer, everything for me is kind of back in the day right now. But anyway, that's where I really grew my career in tech. And I evolved other than, you know, putting all my eggs into planning my work and working my plan and growing my career.
Yeah.
I played semi-pro football for Marlborough Shamrocks. Played some rugby for Worcester Men's Club. And saw some Red Sox games, saw some Patriots games, saw some Celtics games, saw some Bruins games, drank a lot of Sam Adams, ate a lot of chowder, you know, New England clam chowder and lobster. I never did get that accent, thank God. Anyway, all props to my buddies back in Boston. But so that's really where I blossomed into my career in tech. And that really put me in a place to know that I was always sort of the guy that just paid attention. I knew what was going on in any given situation. It was pretty much the gift that I had. So generally speaking, the tech companies who needed contract talent, whether they were assembly technicians, designers and drafters, engineers, they would generally come to my company first because I knew the intrinsics of the type of people they needed with the right skills, the right attitudes, the right ability to blend with the culture of the company. And they're all different. Whether you're technical, temporary talent, you've got to have a lot of clients. You got to have a lot of different companies. You have to know a lot of different cultures. So that was really where I came into my own, and I felt a natural comfort, sort of adept in navigating multiple cultures, navigating multiple scenarios and situations. And that skill, that you know, situational awareness, if you will, is what propelled my company to be the top technical talent provider in the Boston metro area for about 5 years. So I was proud of that.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, kind of strutting my stuff there. And in 92, I was recruited to move out to Silicon Valley from Boston.
Yeah.
And that's where the advent of the dot-com boom was starting. So that's what kind of propelled me into chapter 3 of my professional career.
Okay. So what did that recruiting process look like? What was the moment that you knew my life is about to change again?
You know, the moment I knew was when Liza Tierney, and Liza's great. She was a triage nurse at Mass General. I was dating her. She was awesome, smart, beautiful. She broke up with me because I really was sort of just focusing on work and football. And she's like, I got to come number one, or, you know, I'm not going to be here anymore. So I said, I think I kind of understand that. So I was at a point in my life where I think you just sort of know, okay, I have to take the next step. And as, you know, sort of felicitous happenings would transpire, I got a call from John Mallon, who was Steve Petrowitz's partner, and he ran the West Coast operation for ProSource, is what the company became.
Okay, this is Triple T.
Triple T became ProSource.
ProSource,
Yep, you got it. And Steve and John were partners.
Yeah.
John ran the West Coast operation in Santa Clara, California.
Yeah.
And it just came. Timing just came together where I was ready for a change. I had kind of reached the pinnacle of where I was.
Yeah.
And John said, "Hey, we could use you out in California." I mean, last time I had been in California was when my younger sister was born in 1964. Mm-hmm. Who knows that day, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, "Sure, I'll come out and check it out." So he flew me out, met the team.
Yeah.
Hung out in the office, looked around the area for a place to rent. Of course, when I found a place to rent, the next thing I did was go to the motorcycle dealership.
Yeah, go to figure out the wheels.
And immediately plunked down a deposit on a 1992 Suzuki GSXR 750. Hold it for me. I'll be back in a month, right? Fly back to Boston, rent a Penske truck, load up all my
Penske.
Now at the time, then I had a 93 Toyota Camry. I just bought a new Camry because all my muscle cars got stolen. So I just figured I'd just get something practical. So I had a Camry.
In Worcester. They got stolen from Worcester.
Worcester, downtown Boston. So that's my starting journey in Silicon Valley. Recruited for some larger companies, and then became an in-house contract recruiter for little company called Cisco Systems. You might have heard of them.
Once or twice.
Networking company.
Yeah.
Another big disk drive company back in the day called Quantum. Another little company called Netscape. They made a browser.
Who are they?
Yeah, exactly. Yahoo. Yeah. It's a drink, right? Chocolate drink? Yeah, you. Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I made some rounds in that space, and then I ended up meeting a guy by the name of Pat Bugeaud.
Okay.
Pat had a successful little recruiting business, and he had plugged himself in to the VC investors that were starting to pump money into .com. So this is about 95, 96.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah. It's a long time ago, Ben. It's a long time ago, decades and decades and decades. It's
true, yeah.
It's tales of lore, right? Mm-hmm. So this was the .com boom. Started about 95. I was actually in Google's offices when they were about 50 employees.
Yeah.
Okay. So Patrick and I joined up.
Yes.
And we started a company called Ventures Connect. And we were providing captive recruiting and go-to-market services for early stage .coms. So we literally It begins. We're literally right in the middle of the nucleus of the .com boom. Mm-hmm. So we're working with Red Point Ventures, New Enterprise Associates, Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield Byers, KBCB, all the key hot early stage tech investors.
Yeah.
And when they would throw a $5 million check at a hot new startup, they'd call Patrick or I, whoever was available or between gigs, go out there for 3 to 6 months, build out their teams, figure out a way to get them to market. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
So that was a 5-year run, right? Okay. 96 to 01. That's really where the startup nucleus started. That's really where my career took off. And that's when I knew from working at some bigger corporations, going into startups, that's where I belonged, because I'm like unemployable, right? I could not ever work for a company because corporations, for the most part, are massively dysfunctional across departments. Mm-hmm. I don't have patience or tolerance for that.
Right.
So getting into startups, talking with founders, talking with investors, looking at the landscape, figuring out where the opportunities are, having the ability to be nimble, but knowing there's massive risk. So any decision you made was likely to have significant consequences. Mm-hmm. However, on the flip side, any progress you made was exponentially more impactful than it would be like at a Microsoft, right?
Yes.
Or a large enterprise. Yep. So that whole energy, that whole vibe just connected with me.
Yeah.
And I've never looked back.
Yeah, yeah. Just as an entrepreneur, like I'm a little bit of a black sheep in the entrepreneurial world because I hate the risk. Like I hate the instability. It doesn't sit well with me. I'd much rather go from 0 to 1 just is really hard for me. I love going from 1 to 10, love going from 10 to 100. But the other side of what you said, like if you're really gonna make a bet And if you're really going to stand on, like, you're going to bet on your own capabilities, your own ability to see the need, to find the solution, like you have to be able to do some of that. And that's why, that's why we're playing in this space. And, I've learned to live with the chaos, which has not been fun, frankly.
It's not for a lot of first time entrepreneurs. You've had other business interests as well, and you've done some investments, as have I.
Yes.
So having that mindset already is very helpful. But I understand on the risk tolerance, that's extremely important to understand as a founder, what your risk tolerance is. Because know this, if you're not growing your revenue and profits, you're dying. There's literally only two outcomes.
Yeah.
You are going to grow or you are going to die. There's no middle ground. You can't stagnate and expect to stay there.
Right. No, you're right. So we've talked about a lot of the successes, a lot of the opportunities, a lot of the excitement. What was the lowest moment that came out of all of this? Where was the challenge? Where was the tough?
The bust, the .com bust.
Yeah.
So I was living the life.
Yeah.
Nobody really saw it coming, least of all me, because I'm rocking.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, everything dried up, and literally, it took me personally about 6 months for me to realize that, oh shit, we're in trouble. This whole thing just blew up. People are out of work, and I mean, it was like a light switch went off, Ben.
Yeah.
Everybody was rocking, then nobody was rocking, and so I was kind of in that time zone when I bought my first house for like 1535 Treviso Avenue. I bought it in 1995 for $277,714, brand new construction, 1,600 square feet. Stucco tile roof, gorgeous little end unit in a HOA. The house valuation was probably $1 million by 2000 and early 2001. But I hadn't worked in like 6 months, and I put some money away. But these are back in the days when I'm having these single malt Scotch parties that the bar bill was $10,000. Okay, that's just the bar bill. Anyway, long story short, there was no income.
Yeah.
And so my savings pretty much dried up
Very quickly.
very quickly. So first thing I did was took out a mortgage on the house. Right? Home equity loan is what I ended up getting. And okay, this will tide me over for a while I figure out what's what. So I'm really going all in on the business, trying to look for opportunities to go build companies, which is what I was an expert at.
Yeah.
Startups specifically.
Yes.
All B2B, B2B, all tech. Right.
Yep.
Nobody was hiring, so nobody was hiring anybody that could help them hire anybody. Right.
Yeah.
So I was literally stuck in a vortex of nothing. There was nothing going on. I was still road racing. I actually got really good at it because I had a lot of time to do it. I was like renting tracks, Thunder Hill Raceway, bring my 10 best friends, bring the M3, bring the GSXRs. Come on, everybody show up. It's on me. The home equity loan. Right.
Right.
So at some point, I really have to get a job. Ended up going to work for San Jose BMW. I had bought a BMW motorcycle, my first BMW from Chris Hodgson.
Yeah.
Chris and Kathleen love them to death. They're in Santa Cruz. Just some of the best salt of the earth people you'd ever want to meet. Chris was an old time BMW mechanic, well known among the airheads, they call them, the older BMWs. Went to work for him for about 2 years. Had never sold motorcycles before. Hadn't run any sort of dealership before. But knowing me, I just get in and plan the work the plan.
Yes.
And shot the dealership up, set some new sales records, got them teed up to be a business instead of a shop. Right. And I was proud of that. Then I got bored. And needed a new adventure because I knew my heart was in startups. So late 2005, early 2006, I was doing dealer development for Piaggio, which is the company that does the Vespa scooters. They had bought Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, a few others, and they were coming into the American market again. So I was helping them develop dealer networks, but I was kind of bored. So Dave Dyke, a guy who I coincidentally hired into recruiting, he used to work at Apple. And this is when we were in California. He was living there too. He moved back to Texas, where he's originally from. Moved with his wife and his 2 kids. Moved back down to Austin, Steiner Ranch, and he's like, "Kenan, there's nothing for you up there anymore. You need to move down to Austin." I'd gotten recently divorced and sold the house.
Yeah.
And had a little bit of money left, and I was like, here's the next adventure. That's Northern Virginia, Boston, Silicon Valley, Austin. So literally it's like a triangle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So first time I came down in early 06, I'm like, yeah, this is okay, but not, it's not Silicon Valley. I went back and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I do need to make a change. Loaded up the truck, loaded up the bike, drove down to Austin. That time I had a dog, Molly, my yellow lab. So she was with me in the truck and ended up in Round Rock. Rented a place, sat there and said, okay, what's next? And I started Sellerant in June of 2007. Mm-hmm. And I founded the company to specifically work with startups and small businesses to navigate the complexities of growth when they're up against larger competition or just starting out and there's high risk.
Yeah.
So putting in place, obviously, the sales systems. At the time, I was using Salesforce as a CRM, and going in and creating demo decks and presentations and prospecting scripts and literally like a hired gun sales VP.
Yeah.
So I'd go into small teams and small companies and kind of get them straightened up. So that's how the company started. Mm-hmm. And over time, we've evolved to where we are today. But ultimately, when it circles back to present day, you and I sitting here talking about the revenue recipe.
Yeah.
The objective is very clear.
Yeah.
It's a mission to help those who have the most risk and the most exposure.
Yeah.
And who have the most difficulty navigating the risks and the complexities of getting to market. The revenue recipe stems from plan your work your plan.
Yeah.
So what I'm hoping to accomplish together in this podcast and for our listeners and viewers, if you're thinking about starting a business, or if you're running a business now, or you're a founder or you're a small business owner struggling to grow, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you understand the key pieces because things have never moved faster in the B2B dynamic and growing businesses. It's never been easier to start a business.
Right.
It's never been harder to innovate. So the revenue recipe is about putting in place the key elements, the key pillars to get your business to scale or pivot faster with the least amount of cost, burden, and risk. And that's what we're here to do.
Okay. So setting the table for the upcoming episodes, tell us just a little bit, give us a little taste on those three pillars.
Upcoming episodes are going to be specific around growth pillars. And when I say growth pillars, what I mean is what are the key fundamental foundational elements that a startup and small business have to have. They have to have them nailed. Yeah. Okay. Some of them are pretty straightforward, and there's a lot of different opinions or perspectives and books and tools and classes, and you can ask ChatGPT pretty much any damn thing these days and get an answer. So there's a whole lot of content around these pillars. But what I've learned over going up on 40 years of being in business is there's a practical application and integration of these foundational pillars that still to this day, and disturbingly the pattern is not changing, seem to be missed. It's just overlooked by a lot of founders because they want to hustle, they want to hack. They're looking for a short. They're looking for quick gratification, quick wins, which are important. You have to have quick wins.
Yes.
But they have to be good wins, and they have to be wins you can build on. So I still see a frustratingly high percentage of founders and small business leaders completely ignoring the fundamentals, or they just don't know how to apply them. So what we want to do is help them fix that in a way that they can that's relatable, understandable, where for us, we look at this as a win is when someone that we're talking to about what we do and how we do it and what the outcome should be and what the investment is, they listen to it and they say 3 words: makes perfect sense. We even literally, it's like we heard this every time. So talk to my staff, talk to my colleagues, talk to my partners who are on discovery calls and introduction calls with founders and small business leaders. We'd explain kind of how these foundational pillars go together and how we holistically integrate them to create a growth path and a plan to execute on that growth path.
Yeah.
Every time. Makes perfect sense. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's one of two things. either there's a global conspiracy going on that anybody in this community, they say to each other in this back Slack channel that nobody has access to, hey, if you talk to that Rappuchi guy at Sellerant and he gives you his pitch, just freaking tell him it makes perfect sense. Literally, it happens every time. Or maybe it does make perfect sense. And the fact of the matter is, if it makes perfect sense, why the hell aren't you doing it? That's the question we're going to answer with the revenue recipe. And that's how we plan to help founders and small business leaders grasp and implement these critical pieces of the growth foundation to break through your growth barriers and start accelerating revenue growth for your business.
To our viewers, we say the same words to you. Watch what happens. Watch this space. We're going to be talking about some exciting stuff. We're going to be talking about some strategies, some systems, some skills. Kenan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning, and we look forward to joining you for more episodes of The Revenue Recipe. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Ben.